of you please introduce yourself?
Hi, we are artist collective Within Realities. We are 3 artists based in Amsterdam. My name is Yuchen Li, I'm from China.
I'm Teresa Maria Diaz Nerio from Dominican Republic.
And Aldo Esparza Ramos from Mexico.
Thank you. So from your point of view, what makes a good life?
Good life.
Yes.
I think in our works we deal with the question how to live an ethical life. That's very important for us. That's also why we have this concept of practical decolonization, which is how to really live a decolonial life in our everyday practice. How to do that in the doing.
Yeah, I think when you said about good living, the thing that came to my mind was like clean water. Just like pure, clean water. So that my being well is not endangering nature, that I live in relation with nature, that I acknowledge I am part of something and not only by myself destroying everything. So good living for me is good living in relation with nature and also with other people. So more like peaceful, but not a peacefulness that is not critical. So good living, yeah, clean, something clean. Clean, clear, but not, how to say, without conflict. Because sometimes you need conflict if you want to change things. Conflict also, ideally there will be no conflict, but you can never change the world if you don't challenge things.
Yeah, for me it's a good relation with the others, with nature, and more in rationality, or if you say buen vivir, no? I think those philosophies really describe another that is not only about consumption.
Or not only about human beings.
Yeah.
It's not only anthropocentrism, putting human in the center.
Okay. So you've already mentioned some, but what alternatives are imaginable and practical within current global political and economic frameworks?
I think, I'm very optimistic, so most of the time, not always. But I think anything is possible if you put yourself into it. But the most important thing is responsibility, and that's what we are lacking the most in these modern settings. People are not responsible. So if you don't have the basics, you cannot achieve anything. It doesn't matter what type of ideal you envision. If you don't have the basic things to be responsible for yourself and for others, then we cannot achieve anything. So, you see, the basic thing is becoming, let's say, a morally, ethically more advanced person, and not necessarily to say I am better than other people, not to put yourself on top, but to be on top. Just be on top of your own self, be critical to yourself, be responsible, everything that you ask from the others, just do it yourself first. And then from there you can build up something.
For me, a couple of years ago, my thinking was very black and white, and I always think, how can we change the world or solve this global problem on a global level? But this along the time, I find I'm more inspired by smaller initiatives dedicated into one community and grounded, like a small hope. It doesn't have to be super big revolution all over, or one way of thinking or different ideology, just very grounded actions and constant.
I noticed there are many other alternatives that they really work, and they are really working, and there's people who is really doing something, people who is really trying to have a better way of living in relation with. But these options are not made possible, are made impossible. So many things that should be possible are illegal, and I think how is how can this happen? I think that unthinkable, really. Yeah, there are many examples of people who's really trying to do something and then they are become illegal, they become attacked by the current system. And so my way of dealing with it is just also trying to open these spaces in our thinking for other alternatives and possibilities.
Can you give a concrete example?
Yes, for example, one very known, which are the Zapatistas. No? In the last 20 years, since there have been with a better way of living, with better education, with better economy, you know, and even when they are in the eye of attacking system, you know, surrounded by the army, disappearing and stuff like this. No? But for example, I met one guy in Oaxaca who is a farmer and he was getting these tomatoes from the local office and the seeds from tomatoes and he was growing it and then he has to get the pesticides from it because it was very weak and then the fertilizants from it and then he was spending almost all his money on this and he found the system to get these native tomatoes like almost wild tomatoes like but then he grew them and they grow very successfully and they didn't need any pesticide, they didn't need anything, they were just growing and he was using as a pesticide only for a certain fly, the white fly, he was using garlic, no? And it was working really well. But then when he went to the market to sell it, he was thrown away from the market almost as a criminal and the tomatoes were thrown away. So there was no space to sell these tomatoes and it's like how is this even possible, no? Like
those For what reason?
Huh?
For what reason did they change?
Well, because in the market it's under the control of the same office that sells the seeds of the tomatoes and it's under
the GMO.
It's under the same system. So in the moment that he is using but now it was good because he was making an organic system from people who lives in permaculture or lives in like different crops and they bring their organic things and they was making an alternative market. But of course also that was kind of, that was illegal. No, it's just, yeah, I think that answers my question.
Okay, thank you. So what can be the contribution of art to social change from your point of view?
I think it's, I like to see art as a platform that allows these kind of projects, the kinds of thinking to communicate, to just take shape in the way they need to be without to be exactly about agriculture, about economy or sociology, you know, but it has the space to become what it needs to become. And also it has the power to reach like different platforms, different circles where things can be open, can be possible, interweaving.
For me, the value of art is to keep the complexity in things and the vagueness or gray area, the nuance. Sometimes maybe art is not, for me personally, art is not to deliver a solution or draw a conclusion. It's rather to ask the questions and maybe that the question can connect us. And I think sometimes we take many things for granted and we stop asking questions more and more. So art for me is to come back again and think critically or think in another way and think all together.
Can you repeat the question, please? I think this sounds really disturbing in my mind. So
the question was, which contribution can art give to social change?
To social change. Well, I think one of the important things about art, that is something Aldo was mentioning, is the interdisciplinary approach. Like, when I made works, I always focus on history, and nothing that has to do with art most of the times. So art I use art, but art doesn't use me. So also the good part of art is that we need art in a way. Art is not food, but without music, without films, we are so used to it. Even making a basket, having a nice plate, pottery, all these things influence us. And I think contemporary art should be less contemporary in a way, or less modern, and we should acknowledge more traditional art forms. Like pottery, basket making, traditional garments that are super good quality and last very long and are made with natural materials. So for me, it's more to acknowledge what has already been done instead of like, I'm gonna make these super new contemporary things, and at the end you see a video that is totally empty and I feel like I'm gonna bomb it, So for me, it's more about going as far away from that as possible, from this innovation, technology, blah, 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 and more like using technology if you have to, but more looking at what is already there, what people have been doing, and then using it and making, yes, you can make something new with it, but acknowledge, and bring it on, show people how to make like a flax, like cloth from linen, how do you make linen from scratch. You can show that in an art performance or something, and then it's like, oh, it's something fresh, and then people are like, oh, but we can do that. It's like filmed, So you can really bring a lot of information to people in a very short amount of time.
But also, let's question what kind of change, because social change, society is always changing, and not always for the good way.
Yeah.
So art can be also done used in a very bad way,
Yeah, yeah, that's true, of course.
For the wrong changes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.